And really fundamentally, agents break the request-response paradigm that's been powering the internet for the last 30 years, right? So it used to be that a client makes a request to a server, gets a response back in some milliseconds, displays that, and that's it. And agents just break this whole paradigm.
Hi everybody, welcome to another YAAP episode. And today we're going to talk with Atai from CopilotKit about AI UI, AGUI, MCP UI, and more. Hi Atai, how are you?
Hi Yuval, good to be here.
Thank you so much for coming here. I think I have very, very big FOMO right now from all those AI UI or all those protocols. I keep hearing about all these Vercel for agents. And I thought, who's better to explain that to me from the person who actually wrote AGUI, right?
Yeah, so I can give some background. I'm co-founder and CEO of CopilotKit, which is the company behind the AGUI protocol, the Agent User Interaction Protocol. And yeah, this 2026, I think, is going to be very much seen as the year that AI kind of escaped from the lab, not in the bad way, but in actually getting to the hands of millions and millions of use cases in the hands of real users. And that happens by making AIs talk to users. That's where AI UIs come into being. And we've really been seeing this. It's kind of a layer 2 problem. The first wave is, get something working, a demo that runs somewhere on its own. And then the second wave is, okay, let's get this in the hands of actual users. And we've seen this kind of second wave really at tsunami building up on the last, really over the last 2 years, but the last 3 months there's been a huge uptick. And we're very excited for what's going to happen in 2026.
So maybe walk me through it a little bit. I just found out about this AI UI initials, which I'm really, really excited about. Essentially, it means that every agent needs a way to communicate with users, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, like every piece of software, agents are another piece of software. And, we all got really used to the chat interface, which is part of this agentic UI pattern that's emerging. So you have the world of the chat, which we've come to view as sort of Slack with an agent. Slack, the communication company. It's a high bandwidth communication channel between two intelligent entities, right? The human and the agent on the other side. That is, very broad. It's not pick the right button and choose the right menu. It's you can say whatever you want. So that's what we think of as the chat part of the interface. But chat itself is transitioning from text-only chat to augmented chat. I think by the end of this year, we'll look at kind of text-only chat as kind of like black and white screens. You can still get a lot done, but that's not what you expect.
When you say augmented, you mean, I guess, with images and most importantly,
native
at least
components.
For me, like voice or something else?
Voice as well. I think voice is going to be kind of a secondary wave in addition to that. But yes. So first, the non-voice interface is you're going to take for granted not only images but really just native components that you can interact with alongside the chat, and they can render the data that the agent is talking to you about in whatever shape and form makes most sense. And there's a lot of technical aspects, different flavors of technical solutions that have emerged, and I think will continue to emerge in this space. Then there's the voice layer, which is becoming also increasingly important. I think also we're going to see a huge uptick in voice in 2026. But then also things that happen outside of the chat, right? Again, chat is part of this interaction, but it's not the only place. It's where you have this open-ended communication. But what we've seen is the emergence of these, chat plus application experience that is integrated.
So maybe can you give an example or two to this type of apps?
Yeah, sure. So, there's two big categories of agentic applications. The first is what we call the SaaS Copilot. And that's where you have, an agentic interface for some really complex, SaaS software product, right? So imagine your bank app or, HubSpot introduced the HubSpot Copilot. You have some really complex application, a CRM, bank app, whatever that might be. And you now have this agentic interface. So you can just say what you want to do or learn or whatever it might be, and now knows everything about the application, about you, and can help you get it done or learn what you're trying to learn.
So this is, if I understand correctly, kind of sounds like ChatGPT for
Yeah,
HubSpot, for my bank account, for something like that.
that's right. So that's one type of application. And by the way, it can be something that's embedded alongside some larger existing application, or also just that chat first interface. So we're seeing both of these things having a huge uptick right now. The second category of agentic applications is what we call productivity copilots. It's kind of like a cursor for anything, right? So you have applications that are specifically designed to accelerate core productivity, but without requiring the agent to be perfect, right? Kind of the lesson that the whole ecosystem has learned over the last 2 years is, a full autonomy is a really, really high bar. You have a few solutions that can fully autonomously get complex work done. You have actually a lot of solutions that can get things that are more simple or things where the mistakes are not so costly. So that's where you do see autonomy. But in things that are complex and where mistakes are costly, what you've seen emerge is this pattern of human expert that works alongside an agent. And together you have this iterative loop that drives tremendous work. And so that's kind of the cursor for anything. And you see that as a fully vertical application, but also a lot of businesses, especially large enterprises, are building these internally. So you have 500 employees doing some role. It now makes a lot of sense to build a cursor specifically for that role that just accelerates the quality and the pace of work for that role significantly.
Yeah, I think it's also about trust. Like, I wouldn't trust something who'll just give me something in a press of a button, but if I can work with it, it's probably better, right?
Yeah, it's true, but I think the trust is based on the level of performance. If every time you click the button it was amazing, you'd learn to trust it pretty quickly. But the reality is, it's not there.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
I think we're multiple breakthroughs away from that. But we are already in the domain where if you have an expert that works alongside the system, the world is completely transformed. And programmers know this because now that's already our reality with Cursor, Cloud Code, all these tools, Windsurf. Don't want to plug any specific ones, but that's now kind of redefined programming, and I think going to continue to. But we've already seen a huge part of this shift.
Cool. So maybe let's go focus again on AGUI.
Yeah.
Explain it to me, so by the time that we'll finish this podcast, I can explain to others.
Yeah.
What is it?
So AGUI, it stands for the Agent User Interaction Protocol. And as the name suggests, it's a protocol. And it was a protocol that CopilotKit, our company, built. And it started from our partnership with first LineGraph and then Crew AI. And then since we launched it as a protocol, it's been adopted by essentially all the top players out there. So on the startup side, I have Mastra and Pydantic and Agno and AG2 and Llama Index, and I hope I didn't forget some. I probably did.
You said it so fast that we can just add it in the
add it
in the subtitles, and nobody will know.
Yeah. And then also the last 2 months, the hyperscalers kind of joined this ride. So Google, Microsoft, and Amazon have all integrated their agent frameworks with AGUI. And actually, Amazon told us that it was their most requested feature request after TypeScript support for the agent framework. So we're very excited to hear that. And it's actually the number one fastest growing JavaScript AI framework of all time. Number 5 AI or not AI. So seen a huge uptick. And really what it does, I know your audience is pretty technical, so I'll go a little bit technical. Agents, essentially, they're just software. But I like to say they're kind of a weird bird next to traditional software, right? Because agents, at the very least, they're long running. They have to stream their work as they run. They have to support structured data exchange and unstructured at the same time. So you have the text and the voice alongside the tool calls and the state updates. You have undeterministic control of the UI oftentimes. So you have this kind of long list of these peculiarities. And really fundamentally, agents break the request response paradigm that's been powering the internet for the last 30 years, right? So it used to be that a client makes a request to a server, gets a response back in some milliseconds, displays that, and that's it. And agents just break this whole paradigm.
Yeah, it's not even right for request and response. We had seen the sync and async kind of way that maybe improves streaming and all those kind of things, but breaks everything altogether.
It breaks everything. And so AGUI is sort of a response to that. It's like if you're trying to build a user-facing application, okay, you're not trying to have an agent that runs on its own, but a user-facing application that is agentic. You need a new paradigm of communicating between your agentic front end and your agentic back end. And that's what Age UI is. And it lets you take agents that are built with any of these agent frameworks, or also without any frameworks, and bring them into application ecosystems very easily. So that's what, excuse me, that's what a lot of us and the infrastructure partners are working on. But for developers who build applications, it means they can just take any agent they built and just very easily hook it up to an application. So that's it in a nutshell.
When you say very easily, like I'm imagining some sort of a studio that just connects to whatever I'm doing, or...
So CopilotKit itself, right? So we have the AGUI protocol. There's also the CopilotKit platform, which is also open source, by the way. And it lets you, it's a platform that connects to any AGUI compatible agent. And so, we provide with CopilotKit kind of the full spectrum from fully headless UI. So you're getting full programmatic access to what the agent is doing in a way that is relevant for user-facing applications, all the way to pre-built components. So you can have kind of pre-built React or Angular components that you can just, drop an application, chat, and so on. These components themselves are customizable, right? You can customize custom CSS and so on, or again, get all the way to full programmatic control. You can do both. So that's kind of what that means. CopilotKit provides all these ways to connect your application to an AGUI compatible agent. But CopilotKit is also not the only platform that supports AGUI. It's now becoming kind of increasingly robust ecosystem, but we are really kind of the enterprise-focused, enterprise-grade product for this.
Okay, and I think I'm really interested to learn, how do you build a protocol? Like, do you wake up in the morning and you say, today I will write a protocol? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, so not that at all, for us at least. So AGUI, I think also what's unique about it and why it's caught on so much is it's very much kind of a triply bottom-up protocol. So we did not set out to build a protocol. The very first version of CopilotKit provided kind of an all-in-one agent, kind of a one-size-fits-most agent that was user interactive. And we then saw in our space the need to go beyond the one-size-fits-most to kind of lower-level control. And then we saw from the low-level agent framework sides, they had a really strong need for user interactivity. And so we initially started partnering with LangGraph over what we then called co-agents. That was, user interactivity infrastructure for LangGraph agents. And after we built that, the leaders of essentially many of the other top agent frameworks out there came to us and asked us to, build the same for their ecosystems. So we had a second partnership with, Crew AI. And we then saw, two things. First, we first of all, what our kind of North Star is build user-facing agentic applications. Then we go and talk to the community and see, okay, what are the specific features that people are trying to build for these applications? Then take another step backward and say, okay, what are the programmatic building blocks that you need in order to support these features? And then after we did the Crew AI partnership, we saw that, if we're going to go one by one to all these great companies that we wanted to work with, it was going to take a year and a half to get all the way there. And then on the other hand, we saw that we could factor out one more step back, right? We kind of zoomed out to say, you know what? All these building blocks can be facilitated by all these kind of meta building blocks, and that's the protocol building blocks. And that's how AGUI was born. And yeah, since we launched it, again, kind of had this really strong reception from the community. And we're continuing to be extremely bottom up in our approach here because it's a very, kind of hairy problem, right? Connecting agentic backends and agentic frontends. We're aiming for that to be kind of a general purpose connection. So, the things that are common should be easy, and then the things that are not common should be possible. That's kind of the maxim for developer infrastructure. So that continues to guide us. But we're always kind of, looking, what are the features you're trying to build? Take a step back. What are the building blocks? And then another step back. What are the protocol building blocks?
For me, I feel that, like, if I'm thinking about it as like Vercel, for instance, which is like, easy front end for people who are backend engineers and don't really know how to build UI, I found it to be very, very good for demos or for very simple things. But I think the hardest part was to really take it to an actual application that will look very, very professional. how do you handle these kind of things, or do you not feel like this at all?
So it's interesting you mentioned Vercel. So Vercel has, kind of the classic Next.js and the original Vercel. And now Vercel is also very active in the AI space. We are definitely thinking of, CopilotKit as sort of, Next.js for agents, right? So the backend for the agentic front end, in the same way that Next.js is kind of the backend for the application front end. Vercel also, by the way, has the AI SDK. There's kind of this kind of vertical stack, a bit of a walled garden approach, different from our kind of horizontal approach for a single layer in the stack. So I just wanted to kind of mention that to avoid confusion. But what we've seen, there's kind of history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. We've seen it's really important to have an experience that kind of the drop-in experience. That's where almost everybody starts, and that's also what works in 80% of anybody's use cases. But the last 20% really matters, right? And so you have to have kind of open-ended control in addition to the things that are, again, common and easy. So that's where we have this really strong focus kind of from day one on, okay, we have the pre-built components, but there's all the way to, fully headless UI, full programmatic control. And even inside of the protocol, if you're trying to do something that we never thought about, there's all these escape hatches that allow that to happen. So we are optimizing for, kind of best-in-class applications, not for some kind of toy type of environment. And actually, we're seeing this in our user base. So if you look at our, production installations from companies that are, over, let's say, 50 employees or so, over half of those are the giants. So the Fortune 500s, the Forbes 2000s. So we're seeing a lot of, real kind of enterprise need for this type of the stack. And really, it's to some extent, you have to find the solution. There's some solution to this equation, because it's unreasonable to write literally from scratch this new glue layer between agentic backends and agentic frontends. So you have to kind of search for the right place in the trade-off where you've abstracted away the hard parts, but still gave enough control for needs.
I really like this definition of the new glue between the agentic backend and agentic frontend. That's, like, for me, it makes a lot of sense. Can I maybe take advantage of you a little bit and get maybe a full landscape overview of all the AI UI right now? Maybe what's the difference between them?
Yeah, definitely. So first, definitely the glue is, I think, we're all taking for granted the last 30 years of glue between front ends and non-agentic systems, but kind of have to refactor all that for the agentic world. In terms of protocols, obviously there's also outside of UI. So the way I think of it is kind of the protocols, and then all of those protocols have some intersection with the UI world, and these intersections are where we've found opportunities for handshakes between the protocols that I can also talk about. But obviously you have MCP, right? And that's
yet another AI protocol.
Right, yet another AI protocol that connects, an agent to mostly third-party tools and context, right? So you can bring the outside world into your agent in kind of this uniform way that works interoperably, right? And so that's kind of one place. And then you have A2A, that's another big protocol, agent-to-agent protocol from Google. And that's to connect your agentic system to other agentic systems. And then AGUIs really kind of emerges the third leg of the triangle in connecting your agentic backend to your agentic application, right? So if you're building a cursor, if you're building a HubSpot Copilot, connects your agentic backend to your application. Now MCP has, these tools and contexts can return no longer just text to the end user, but you want them to be able to return components, actual components. And that's where MCP UI kind of solve this initial need.
So let's say if I ask about a song, instead of me getting just the name of the song and link to Spotify, I can now get an embedded version of Spotify.
Exactly. Instead of just getting the text and then you can kind of work with Markdown to you can have it turn into a link and so on. You can actually have the Spotify widget be returned inside of your chat. And MCP UI was actually just very recently built upon by OpenAI and by Anthropic and turned into what's now called MCP apps. And there's a whole app store that's kind of emerging in the OpenAI, the ChatGPT and then the Anthropic kind of Claude apps that is another attempt. There's been a few attempts to kind of create these app stores for agents. So far, they haven't really stuck, but I think we're probably going to get there at some point, and this is a huge improvement over what we had before. So that's now, again, your Spotify MCP server can respond not just in text, but in actual, the widget with a playlist. Maybe you can play and they can actually hear it, in the ChatGPT app. And that's an opportunity that we're working with the MCP UI folks over a handshake that should hopefully come out, the first version at least, over the next few weeks. And that lets you, if you're building your own agentic application, now all the MCP tools that you connect to, the UIs that they return will just connect all the way through to the front end. So there's under the hood there quite a bit of complexity. They're hoping to kind of, again, abstract away from developers, so they don't have to worry about fetching the resources from different servers and representing them. So that's kind of one layer of distinction. I'll leave it at that for a second, but I'll come back to that in a minute.
And it actually sounds very complementary in a way. Like AGUI and MCP UI can work together.
100%.
To do the full solution, I would say.
Yeah, we don't think of them as competition at all. It's 100% complementary. Again, we're kind of focusing on your application, but your application is going to connect to other third-party application. And that's really what MCP apps is optimized for, right? Bring the kind of app store into your application. So we want it to work such that you can bring, the OpenAI app into your own application as well, not just into OpenAI's client. So that's one part. From A2A, actually, just a few weeks ago, came A2 UI that we were launch partners for. So A2 UI is actually, the name is a little bit confusing.
Agent to UI.
Yeah, probably. I don't know if it has an official expansion, but it came, around the A2A team. So, A2A has a very natural name. But it's actually a spec for declarative generative UI. So maybe that's a good place to...
What?
Yes. So there's a lot of flavors of generative UI. The most simple, straightforward flavor of generative UI is what we call static generative UI. And that's when a programmer defines, a list of available components for the agent to return to the user. And the advantage of that is you can get everything kind of pixel perfect for exactly the use case you built it for. The disadvantage is you have to build it for every specific use case, right? So it's really good for kind of the opposite of the long tail, right? Kind of the 8 use cases that are actually really common in your application. You really want to optimize them. You don't want to do something that's kind of suboptimal to optimize for some technical constraints. So that's really good for that. That's really straightforward. That's been what's been, in practice, actually being used by applications in production so far. For the most part. Now MCP UI, now MCP apps, is exploring something, the complete opposite end of that spectrum. So that's fully open-ended generative UI. So the tool can return whatever it wants. There's no coupling between the front end and the back end at all. And this has other trade-offs, both in terms of user experience. Now inside your application can live anything. There's some security implications as well. There's technical implications that are not yet solved in terms of web and mobile. In the web world, it's very easy to have fully open-ended generative UI because you just basically stick an iframe in there.
Yeah.
In the mobile world, it's harder. So that's what MCP apps. That's the approach that corner of the universe takes, which makes a lot of sense for bringing apps outside in, right? A2UI is kind of this middle step between the static generative UI on the one end of the spectrum and the fully open-ended generative UI. Declarative generative UI lets you essentially define a declarative spec, that defines sort of these kind of Lego block-like components. So you can have, let's say, a title, and you can have an image, and you can have maybe a carousel of some images, and you can have maybe a map component that shows pins on a map, and maybe a Google Maps address input field. right? So you can have all these different components that are predetermined, and now the agent can return how do you put these together for a specific response. So it's semi-open-ended, right? You can't do whatever you want. If you want to do the Spotify component and it looks like the actual Spotify component, you can't do that. But you can do a list of songs that works reasonably well. And so that's kind of a good middle ground. And there's advantages there. There's low coupling between the front end and the back end. So you can have the back end kind of get worked on independently. It can work for mobile and for web, because you can just create mobile representations of these things.
Of the Lego blocks.
Exactly, the Lego blocks. But the trade-off is you can't get things kind of pixel perfect. So we see all three of these approaches kind of coexisting for the foreseeable future. And on the A to UI side, that's another opportunity for a handshake there. Again, we were kind of launch partners for this. We actually built the A2UI composers. If you go to the A2UI project page, another open protocol, there's a editor where you can kind of build these components. So we built that one, and you can now plug it into any
any application that you build.
Yeah, exactly. Any application you can build, and you can also point. So that's getting even more technical, but AGUI it can connect directly to also any A2A application, so an agent-to-agent application. And if that returns an A2UI component in the same way that an MCP app can return, component, that will also stream all the way through to the front end. No glue. No extra glue. Of seamlessly from the application developer standpoint.
The glue is there. Just
the glue is pre-shipped.
Yeah, you already did it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. So that was a really nice overview of all the, I would say, UI protocols that we have right now.
Right.
Those of like the MCP UI or MCP apps, A2 UI, and of course AGUI.
Mm-hmm.
So now essentially I can just go and choose whatever I want for my application. So this is what's happening right now. You've mentioned that 2026 is the year of AI UI, and you're seeing a lot of exponential growth with CopilotKit, with AGUI. What's in store for the upcoming year? I usually never ask for more than a year, even a month seems ridiculous, but you're seeing a lot of this. You really know everything about this landscape. So what are your hunches, I would say?
Yeah. So there's a few things. First of all, this ecosystem is moving incredibly fast, faster than I think any technological revolution until now. So it's risky to make long-term predictions. But I think that there are, at the same time, we've kind of moved to the step where we kind of figured out the basics, and now they're just getting productionized. I think that's going to be the main theme of 2026. So first of all, everything I mentioned is going to be taken for granted in every application. Again, I think I mentioned this before, text-only chat is going to be looked at kind of like a black and white screen. You're going to take for granted that when you have a text or a chat interface, it's not going to respond to you just in text. And when the right tools calls for whatever it is, as an end user, you'll just expect to see that, which raises the bar for what developers have to build into applications. So that's going to happen. I think mobile is a place where we haven't seen yet a ton of adoption past just ChatGPT and Claude, and Gemini, just the native applications of those.
Which is, I'm guessing it's because it's harder, because mobile is literally the future. Right?
It's
present even. I don't know why I say it's the future. Everybody has mobiles, and
everybody has mobiles. There's actually, on the productivity side, these agents I think are still actually kind of more suitable for desktop type work. But on the SaaS side, mobile is going to be the majority. But you have to start somewhere. I think we've just seen it in our own experience, but we've also seen it in all our partner frameworks. You have to start somewhere. The natural place to start is web. It's just a bigger, more uniform audience. But we're going to see a big focus on mobile in 2026, and we certainly see this in our roadmap, and we actually already have design partnerships with some folks who have already deployed to production. But we're going to see that becoming kind of more and more mainstream. So mobile is one part. Voice is another big part. So, it's just a really, again, it's what we're doing now is actually a form of chat if you think about it. It's kind of real life audio video chat.
Yeah, I'm essentially prompting you to tell me things, and you're teaching me based on the prompts.
Yeah, and it's language based. Like we've invented this amazing interface for communication, language. Who would have thought? So voice is also going to be taking a huge uptick, and then you're already seeing this, in the leaders. Voice is going to be voice plus. It's not going to be voice only. It's going to be voice plus the agent can show you a bunch of generative UI to communicate things beyond just hearing it out loud. So it's almost like, you have a PowerPoint slide in real time generated as opposed to a pure audio only lecture. So I think that's going to be kind of a big uptake. And then, so that's kind of on the pure kind of user experience side. I think we're also going to see, there's this phrase, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. So I think what we already saw happening in the programming world over the last 2 years is going to come to many other disciplines by the end of this year. And so, in the programming world, there's a learning curve. It's not like it's magic solution for everything. And there's things it works for, things that doesn't yet work for. But generally speaking, programming is not the same profession it was 2 years ago because of these agentic tools. We're going to see that coming to a lot of other kinds of knowledge work. And then what we're really excited about is kind of a next step beyond that is, when you have the whole economy, the whole knowledge economy in the limit, right? Essentially interacting with these agentic applications every single day, for many hours every single day. Every one of these interactions you can think of it as a correction to what the agent got right, what the agent got wrong, right? You're interacting with a cursor. You want it to do everything in principle. It doesn't do everything. But these corrections, right now, the focus is on enabling them, right? That's where the generative UI, AI UI, AG UI, all these things live, enabling these interactions between agents and users.
Yeah, because I'm getting essentially the actions of the agent, and I'm directing it, right? This is bad, improve this, do this better.
And you have in chat, in app, all these things combined. But then the next step is, this is kind of a huge gold mine of data, right? Because the next thing everybody wants to do after they build their first agentic application is improve that agent. And that's really, really hard to do. And you can easily spin your cycles and try all sorts of things that don't really work. Essentially, all the approaches that do work in this space require very high quality data of what does good look like? What did the agent get right? What did the agent get wrong? And there's whole industries that are kind of popping up to try to fish this data anywhere you can. One of the best possible places is exactly in this agentic last mile, right? We're all giving this correction input at massive scale, wherever we're using these things. And again, the future is already here, not evenly distributed. Cursor, OpenAI, Replit are already using all the interaction data to significantly lift the performance of their systems. What we're excited about is bringing that RL, reinforcement learning layer, kind of democratizing it so that any agentic application built with CopilotKit will kind of get it for free.
Yeah, so not just glue code, everybody, now RL embedded in AGUI and CopilotKit.
Yeah, exactly. Because the data that flows through this AGUI boundary is all of these kind of corrections that users are making to agents, and that kind of the whole interaction. You have this whole path that starts with some goal and ends with some end product, but it's a winding road. I can kind of incorporate that into learning.
Yeah, and I think if you can manage to do that, it will be great because, right, we know that reinforcement learning is probably at least the most natural way to learn, and probably the best. It's just so hard to do.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of people just can't manage to do it. I didn't manage to do it in my thesis. So it's been a while. The world has developed, but still, it's so hard to do it right.
It's really hard. And there's also a whole kind of, industry of infrastructure that's being built to enable different parts of this stack. So Mira Muradi famously now has Thinking Machine Labs, and of course all the model companies have kind of more and more advanced fine-tuning APIs. What we're kind of excited about is the data, because there's a huge data bottleneck. We're all labeling AI output all day long. how do you leverage that at kind of orders of magnitude greater scale? And that's kind of what we're excited about. But what we're excited to also, you don't want to, boil the ocean. There's a lot of really great infrastructure companies that what they're missing is the data, and you kind of want to create these, partnerships to get, companies to just have this loop happen without each company having to, and each team having to kind of reinvent your thesis. It's not easy at all.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's great. I'm really, really excited to see what you will do in the upcoming month. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I learned so much about this. I feel that the FOMO no longer.
That's good.
So thank you very much for coming.
Awesome. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And stay tuned for more episodes of YAAP.